Hey everybody, in this episode we have a young man named Josh. Josh is amazing. He in fact was a client with us a couple years ago, and we get into a lot of details about what it's been like for him over the past couple years. Couple things that we talk about: the importance of sober living, why we think it is necessary for just about anybody, and also why our physical health is so important whenever we do get clean and sober, and the things that we should do and could do to help improve our overall physical health and the mental effects that it can have on us and how it can help us sustain our sobriety. So we cover those things and so much more in this episode. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
Yes, sir. All the way. Let's go.
That was good, Ben. And we also have a young man by the name of Josh. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great today.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Ben?
Yes. Was that too soft? We need to be like, yes.
Oh, that was good.
I'm trying to switch it up.
Yeah. How was that, Josh? You think?
I think it was great.
All right.
If you throw Tom off a little, he's like, what do I do? He said something different.
Hey, a couple of homework pieces to start. Go to realrecoverytalk.com/guide. There you are going to have a downloadable PDF, 5 things that you could do, 5 steps that you could take to get your loved one the help that they need. Just go to realrecoverytalk.com/guide and type your email in, and it'll come straight to your inbox, and print it out, hang it up on your refrigerator, put it in your car. You know, like sometimes things I need to remember, but oftentimes forget that it's there. I'll put up in my visor, put that PDF download up there, that way when you go to pull the visor down, it falls in your lap and you're like, oh, I can do these 5 things to help my loved one get the help that they need. Right, Ben?
Yes, sir.
And also go to realrecoverytalk.com/reconnect on August 1st. We're starting our Family Reconnect program. If that's something that you're interested in, go to realrecoverytalk.com/reconnect, and that will have all the information that you need to sign up there. And I'm excited for that. So, am I forgetting anything? Oh, Real Recovery Talk live at realrecoverytalk.com. If you want to do a live call-in show, live at realrecoverytalk.com. Anything else?
No, that's it. I'm looking forward to the Family Reconnect because then we have personalized experiences with our listeners.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh, for sitting through all that. Let me do a brief introduction. So Ben and I roll in. We get to the office. It is a Friday morning, and we're standing in the halls, saying hello to all the people. And I see this young man standing in the hallway, and I'm like, this guy looks familiar. Well, it was Josh, and I was rather taken back to where I had actually pulled Ben aside. I'm like, is that Josh? And Ben peeked around and said, yeah, it's him. So
I should have said, yeah, that's half of them.
Yes, that's half of them. Well, Josh and I got to talking, and it made all the sense in the world to record this podcast because Josh, in fact, was a client with us a couple years ago, and Josh, you had a celebration.
Right. Celebrated 2 years yesterday.
2 years of continuous sobriety, nights and weekends.
Nights and weekends.
7-11. It's a pretty easy sobriety date to remember.
Right?
Oh, yeah, 7-Eleven.
That was my first job.
Was it really?
It was.
Did you get a free Slurpee yesterday?
Oh, I didn't.
No. Well, you probably... It wouldn't be in your meal plan, I suppose.
No.
Did they give out free Slurpees?
Sugar, but
Yeah. 7-Eleven day. My kids all got free Slurpees. And because they were with my mother-in-law all day yesterday. So what does she do? Takes them to Publix. And you know what kids get at Publix? A free cookie. And then 7-Eleven's right across the road. So she goes over to 7-Eleven to get gas or whatever. And then it's posted real huge on the door, free Slurpee for 7-Eleven day. So they ended up with cookies and Slurpees for lunch.
I've got some childhood memories there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
For 7-Eleven?
And the icy brand, the one with the blue polar bear on.
Yeah, those are still around.
Yeah, the
Good
cherry
stuff.
Circle K was my dig back in the days. We didn't have a 7-Eleven by my house. We had Circle K.
Yeah, I never really got into. I think we talked about gas station food before on the podcast. I like the round like taquito things.
I love those. A good corn dog too.
Yeah, good corn dog.
Gas station pizza though, with the exception of Shell gas station in Juno Beach with that dude.
Oh,
Gas station pizza's terrible.
gas station pizza's no good.
Except for the Shell gas station in Juno Beach that is award winning. Would it get an 8.2?
or 8.6.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? What's that place called?
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
I know Racetrack has some good pizza
Oh, really?
for a gas station racetrack.
Bro, see, I can't do it,
Weird,
dude.
but I don't eat. I try not to eat that stuff.
All right, so we're going to get right into this. Josh, first thing I want to say is congratulations on 2 years. That's a huge milestone. And take us through just like literally a couple minutes about like your drinking habits and your patterns and stuff like that, maybe a little bit of your treatment history. But I kind of know the directions that I want to go with this. But I want to give you an opportunity just to share, a tiny bit of your story at first.
Okay. So, Josh, I'm an alcoholic and I'm 26 years old. I was born in Texas. I have a normal family. My family are not alcoholics, even though I have alcoholics on some other sides of my family. Had a great childhood. Did suffer a little bit of trauma, even though I don't remember too much of it. But, that doesn't make me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is, I have the obsession of the mind paired with a physical allergy. Once I put this thing in my body, any mood or mind altering substance, I break out in this thing called a phenomenon of craving. And once that is upon me, it's on. I can't stop once I put something into my body like that. And, like I said, I had a great childhood. I had a ton of friends growing up. But I always felt alone. I always felt like this odd puzzle piece out, and I didn't necessarily fit in. I was 1.5 feet taller than all the other kindergartners, as well as, growing up in middle school. I went to a private school. So, I was always around God, but I didn't necessarily understand what these people were talking about. I knew God was like this great being, and I just didn't have any experience with it. I always, I was going into my life, I was a Christian and, but I had no relationship with a higher power until I found, drinking and drugs. And I was just like, whoa, this is relief that I'm getting here. I didn't necessarily feel so alone. I didn't necessarily feel, so bad, so anxious, it kind of just took me out of myself and I could at least be a part of life. And I did not for once think that, that I want to be sober from that point. It was like, this takes away my pain. This takes away whatever Josh is feeling. And I kind of just rolled with it. The first hit of a joint, it didn't really hit or resonate too much, but, after a couple of times it was on after that. I didn't necessarily drink as much. And it's funny because I had such a hard time classifying myself as an alcoholic, but because I leaned really heavily into drugs. But my alcoholism wants me to forget all the times I raided my parents' liquor cabinet, all the times that I blacked out and threw up in my bed. And every time I went to a party, I was like, yeah, I'll just have a couple beers. The next thing you know, I'm on the bathroom floor throwing up, causing a scene, and I was just unwelcome. And, I'd wake up and some of my stuff would be stolen.
That was always the worst. You'd go somewhere for a good time and end up getting robbed or whatever. I remember one time my bicycle got thrown on the roof of a house. Ben?
I think this is a traumatic experience for him because whether you know it or not, Tom, you have brought up this bicycle so many times to me.
Yeah.
It's like the bicycle.
It was winter. That's why it was winter. And they thought it was a good idea to throw my bike on the roof of this house and make me walk.
I'll get with Nicole, Maya, and Hannah and get you some EMDR on this bicycle event.
So what what age was this when you really just started kind of experimenting?
So the first time I tried like pot I was 14. I was like in 8th grade, and I thought it was like the answer. You know, I got like a really good grade on my math test, and I was like, wow, you know, if I just smoke a little bit of weed, I'll do good in school.
Yeah, it's like nature's Adderall.
It did help me sit through school, dude. It really
I was
did.
never into pot.
It made it tolerable.
Yes.
Made it tolerable.
I want to touch on something that you brought up. I want to let you know I was smiling ear to ear. Josh was like looking at me. I couldn't help but smile ear to ear because like he was just like full out nerding out on AA.
I was going to bring that up. Let me say this before you go there. I was going to say that one of the coolest things about what we do is, and I'm coming up on 14 years sober, okay? And I do not say that to brag at all. The cool thing is that like you have 2 years of sobriety and you know that book a hell of a lot better than I do. And that's what's cool about this is that like because I remember when we were sitting down in the group room one day and this kid had just in small talk mentioned that like he could sing. And I totally put him on the spot. I'm like, start singing then. In the group. And he literally sang, I can't remember.
It was Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace. He sang Amazing Grace. And I recorded it. But I all that to say, like, I don't know how much sober time you had at that point. Wasn't much. I mean, if you were in treatment with us, and to hear you now reciting lines out of the big book is pretty cool.
Well, he speaks a new language now. A lot of times, dude, I feel really overwhelmed and I have to like dial myself back because I'll be, you know, for me, sometimes I struggle with, I'm sitting in front of running group, 15, 20 people, and I've got all this knowledge and information and details bouncing around in my head, but I want to just like vomit it all over them and be like, take it all. But I have to remember like, we can only take so much at a time, and give them small pieces of information. And eventually, like you're getting at, Tom, the beautiful thing, over the course of 2 years, he's like speaking another language.
Yeah.
It's the language that I wish they all came in speaking, but like that's not how this works. And inadvertently, I'm glad I'm bringing this up too, because I think it really hits home the point for like families and loved ones who have an addict or alcoholic in treatment. Like this process takes time, and even I don't think the right word for me is frustrated. I don't necessarily get frustrated, but I get like overwhelmed with like, oh my God, they have so much to learn and they just don't even know what they don't know yet. But you are evidence that with time, it all comes, you know? Can I jump? I want to jump into what I actually wanted to bring up too. Something that I love that you brought up was you referred to alcohol and drugs as like a higher power.
Right.
So many times, you know, for instance, we have people that come in, and I was the same way. So this is the pot calling the kettle black. But I'd come in and say, I don't want anything to do with God or a higher power or any of that. Forget this 12-step stuff, all this hocus pocus. But then, like, when it gets reverted back, and I'm like, dude, I was eating mushrooms and ecstasy, like trying to have spiritual experiences. All of a sudden, somebody suggests to me that part of sobriety is spirituality. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want nothing to do with that. And I kind of look at it like drugs are like training wheels for people trying to experience spirituality. Today, I can have spiritual experiences without substance. We get rid of the training wheels. And I honestly like think that's the difference with people that stay sober. They're able to connect without some mood, mind altering substance to like bring them there. Like for instance, even, and I don't want to go off on some crazy tangent, but people that try to do like ayahuasca, ibogaine, you know, mescaline, all the stuff that people are trying to use nowadays to have a spiritual experience. Let me go to Peru so I can do ayahuasca in some hut to deal with my heroin addiction. Same kind of thing. Like I'm not poo-pooing it. Like let people try what they want to try. But can you get to the point where you don't need that stuff to have that same experience? You know, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. I just love that I heard that because people, I think, don't give that enough credit. Like,
right. You know, it's like, I pretty much did all of those drugs that you mentioned. You know, I've done DMT, I've done a ton of acid, a lot of shrooms, some mescaline here and there. You know, I sought those spiritual experiences. I always did way too much. And it's like if somebody were to offer me like a couple grams of like, I mean, I'd take it, but like I was gonna always want more. So, you know, I always bought in bulk. I remember, you know, I don't want to get too much into the war stories, but I always took like either 7 grams of mushrooms or I would like experiment with like 2 or like 4 tabs of acid. I mean, I was always like a big tripper, and like eventually I wasn't getting those experiences that, you know, that were like, anymore. It was just mostly like that, the darkness, the fear. And, you know, I wasn't necessarily getting too much of a spiritual experience anymore. It was more of like looking back at my past and self-pity. You know, and it kind of really turned me off of tripping. And eventually I just started getting really into stimulants, like crystal. And then, you know, the real hallucinogenic effects with the sleep deprivation and everything. But yeah, it was my higher power. And eventually, you know, that higher power failed me. You know, consequences started coming up. You know, eventually I got kicked out of my parents' house. 23 and living at my parents' house, no bills besides my car payment. And, you know, had a good paying job. But most of my money was going to drugs, like 1/2 ounce of weed every week, probably like an 8-ball or anything along those lines, whatever I was feeling. And, you know, I would be like, I feel like this, I'm going to go buy that. I feel like this, I'm going to go buy that. I was always reaching for something to fill this hole inside of me because I always felt like crap. But I didn't know what I suffered from. It's funny because I always talked about, I'm an addict. And I wore that with a badge of honor, not knowing what that really meant. And, you know, today I'm an alcoholic and I'm a drug addict, but I know what that means today. And it's not a negative thing for me. I love it. You know, without being an alcoholic and a drug addict, I wouldn't have to change. I wouldn't need to change. And because of the change that it's brought in my life, because I have a conscious contact with my higher power, and, you know, I continually have those spiritual experiences like every day. You know, it's everything that I looked for in the drug and in the bottle, but it's way better. You know, no acid trip or no DMT trip can even compare to the serenity and peace that I feel today. You know, sure, those 20 minutes of like having that nod off of DMT where I felt great at the time, and I felt like I was soaring through space and time, enjoying life. I was one with life. But now it's like I feel a part of life without the drugs. I felt like I had to use drugs to be a part of life. And, you know, without having to, like, waking up in the morning, not have to reach for a vape or a needle or a pipe or a drink or anything like that, I would have never saw it coming.
Wow. That's pretty impressive, dude.
Yeah.
It's funny how God works, you know, Ben. We weren't, and you know what's interesting is before we started this podcast, you know, one of the things you told me this morning?
No, I think I told you a lot, probably.
You said downstairs, you know, I just want one morning where I don't have negativity to start the morning. You know what I mean? And given your circumstances, and we haven't talked about anything, and we're not going to, but you got a lot of stuff going on. I think this is a God thing.
No, it absolutely is. And this is, since you kind of brought it up, like I'll say this just briefly. I do have a lot of personal stuff going on in my life, but out of respect for other parties involved, I don't bring up the details on here because I don't think it would be fair. Me, I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. And if it was solely up to me and I didn't have to think about anybody else, I would just talk about it all. But with that being said, you're 100% right. This is the beautiful thing about the program is like neither one of us knew Josh was going to be here this morning.
Yeah. And
then I get to sit here and just see the results of somebody doing the work. And the beautiful part for us, I don't like taking credit for any of that. But what I do thank people like Josh for is being able to be there as a witness to experience that and get to see it, you know, and then to get here, to sit here, and it's inspiring, you know. In an instant, it turns my day around. I did say that this morning. Can't I just start my day without like a negative situation or something like that? That's been just the world I've been living in for a little while. Until you brought it up just now, I wasn't thinking about that at all. And that's why the 12th step is so freaking important. The big book says, when all else fails, work with another alcoholic saves the day. It doesn't say when all else fails, pray about it. When all else fails, you know, go to the gym. When all else work with another alcoholic. Nothing will lift you up on your feet so much as like sitting down with somebody and being inspired by their story and seeing where Josh came from. Because in a little bit, I want to bring this up. I'll touch on it now. I don't want to forget. Mm-hmm. So put this on the agenda for whenever we get to the appropriate time. But he really struggled in treatment too. And I don't want to disclose. We'll let him tell his version of that, whatever he wants to disclose about it. But like, that's the thing is we witnessed him down in the dumps for months, maybe.
Well, let's get into that right now since we're here.
Oh, okay.
As much as you want to share about it.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm an open book too.
Let me ask you this real quick. Yes, do that. What led you to treatment? How'd you get here before we get there? That's
a funny story before I came into detox on April 2nd, 2022. Before I got here in Florida, I had been into treatment twice already, within 6 months of each other. So,
in Texas,
okay. Yeah, twice in Texas. I remember, of course it just wasn't working anymore. Crying myself to sleep or blacking out. And I wanted to go to treatment. I had asked my mom for a while. It's like, I need to go to treatment because I cannot stop this no matter what I try. And, I ended up going to treatment and going to detox. And like, of course, the psychosis was on me. I thought there were cameras everywhere. Everybody was looking at me. But the first time I got into treatment, I looked at the 12 steps. And I said to the tech, if I do these 12 steps, can I drink and drug like a normal person? Because that's all I could think about. That's all I obsessed about was drugs and alcohol. I relapsed 2 weeks after getting out of there on Xanax. I was going to go to a meeting, but one of the guys was like, hey, I've got some Xanax. Of course I'm going to go take the Xanax and go to an arcade. Of course I am. I'm an addict.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And then 2 weeks after that, I started smoking crystal again. And then 2 weeks after that, I thought it was a great idea because smoking wasn't working anymore to start shooting up again. And then 6 months later, I woke up in the hospital after having a seizure of overamping, and woke up with no recollection of how I got there. All I know is that I blacked out. My parents weren't there. My friend's parents were there. They were good in the church. The staff minister and his wife. And I grew up with his kids. And I was like, "What are you guys doing here?" And they're like, "We're going to help you go to treatment." I was like, "No." I'm going to go get high. That's all I could think about. Eventually I didn't go to treatment. I got kicked out with good reason. Of course, I just had a seizure. Family was traumatized. Went and got loaded, and it found myself at like a Pentecostal church. I didn't like that experience. But I'm not here to bash them because they kept me. I was able to stay sober and stay separated for 2 weeks while I lived there, flying a sign and helping them out or raise money for that. I had like a quota.
Hang on a second.
Wait, yeah.
I don't want to breeze past that.
Yeah.
You lived at a Pentecostal church?
I did for 3 weeks.
Is that a thing? I didn't know.
They had a little drug and alcohol program. I would basically go out onto the streets and quote unquote fundraise for the church. And I'd go to car to car and basically tell them what I'm doing and where I'm living and what
you said
the
flying a sign. Like what would the sign say?
Or I didn't have a sign. It was just like I never flew a sign. I didn't have a sign saying like, help me, drug addict, alcoholic.
Oh,
But, I went up to cars and like some people had signs, but I went up to cars and basically just waved at them and told them it's like, hey, I'm with this church. We help like drug addicts and alcoholics. Do you have any money to donate for the cause and for our mission? And most of the time I'd just be like, no, or just like shoo. And I did that for like 3 weeks, from 8 o'clock to 6
so
o'clock.
you're essentially
in the afternoon.
panhandling for the church.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. Well, hey, listen.
But I was in a deep psychosis, so I was just like, and of course, I was trying to run to God as I understood him at the time. And, that's where I was suggested to go. And I remember going there and I was just like, I don't think this place is for me. And then looking at my arm, it was, of course, the psychosis. I thought I was shrinking and I was dying after being up for like 5 days. I was like, wow, I'm dying, and if I want to live, I need to run to God. It's like I either die in my addiction or if I seek a higher power other than drugs and alcohol. And I ran to God and I ended up in that church for 3 weeks until I heard something that I didn't relate with. I didn't necessarily smoke crack. So I was looking for a reason to leave. Yeah. It's like I didn't smoke crack and I didn't eat food out of dumpsters yet. So I was like, I don't like that message. I don't relate with it. And I left. And then not even like the next day I went to work and got loaded. It's funny.
Were you an electrician at this time?
Yeah.
And we didn't mention this, but you are an electrician.
Yeah.
Would it be like you went to school for that and all that stuff, or just self-taught?
Just learned it all on the job. I struggled for years because of course I was getting high and I was so egotistical. I was like, yeah, you guys don't know anything. I didn't know anything.
Oh man. I can imagine being an electrician tweaking out on crystal meth.
Dude, I know. I'm sitting here like thinking about that. I'm like, when you took stuff apart, did you put it back together, or did you just like go in, I'll do this job, and then you just leave?
I was like, nobody does this as fast as I do.
They probably didn't either. All right, so get to the treatment. You ended up in Florida.
I ended up in Florida after my second treatment in December 27th through January 27th. I relapsed in treatment, and I thought I could drink like a normal person. I thought drugs were my problem, so I had a couple of sangrias with my mom. Didn't think anything of it. Had a good night and slept well. Sometimes it appears well. I show up at the airport, I passed a bar and had a couple shots of Jameson. Didn't think anything of it. Landed here in Florida, asked my parents for money to go to the grocery store. I was living with my aunt at the time because she needed help, and bought like $70 worth of liquor, like 2 bottles of liquor, and then like $30 worth of groceries. And I was drunk within the hour because I didn't think alcohol was my problem. Fast forward 3 months, not even 3 months, like 2.5 months later, I was already shooting up meth again.
Here in Florida,
up in Stewart and Port St. Lucie. I'd gotten kicked out of my aunt's house and went to this crazy party the night before I went into treatment. And, I snuck out that night because I wanted to go get high. And I had gotten high the previous night. So, most people would like take a hit and be like, all right, I'm good. I can go to work, or I can show up to life. But me, no, once that craving is on me, I'm done. It's more and more and more and more. So I went into detox still high off my ass.
Yeah.
So, of course, they told me I needed to go to treatment, but I just wanted to go back to the party. They already had all my stuff packed up for me. And I had track marks all up and down my arm. And whenever they told me, you can't live here, we have kids and everything, I understood that. In my addiction, I understood I could not be there. I wanted to go out and drink and drug to my heart's content, but I didn't want to hurt other people. But little did I know just how many people I was really hurting. I thought I was only hurting myself. Wind up in treatment April 2nd, 2022, up in Port St. Lucie. And eventually, I heard of Rock from a client over there that works here, Marie. And I remember seeing Ben come up to the treatment center and give his story. And I remember Marie was just in tears, and then went up to Ben and started hugging him. And I was I was a little close with Marie, and she suggested that Rock is amazing. It's a great place. I was just like, well, I have nowhere else to go. I'm stuck here in Florida. I can't live with my aunt. Can't live with my cousin. My cousin told me I needed another 30 days of treatment after detox, so I don't have anywhere to go. So I decided to come down here and do PHP and IOP. And little did I know that I'd still be here 2 years later.
So you were in treatment with Marie?
I was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Detox, yeah.
Yeah, dude. Now I'm putting all the pieces back together. I'm like, wow.
Were you at what is it? Behavioral health?
Yeah, Stephanie Matthews asked me to go up there.
Yeah.
And share.
So Ben had mentioned that you had some struggles while you were here. I want to spend a couple minutes on this, and then I want to get into really a lot of the good things that have taken place over the last 2 years.
All right.
What were some of the struggles you were having?
So, I really struggled with the idea of not being able to ever drink and drug again. I really struggled with that. Thank God I had people like Ben Bueno and Harrison to really, kind of nail it into me. That's like, you really can't do that. And even people that over time, like I worked with and said, you're an addict and an alcoholic. You can't drink and drug anymore. You can't even smoke weed. And I was like, what? I can't even smoke weed? But I really struggled with the idea that I was never going to drink and drug again. It was like mourning the lost. And of course, being on antidepressants, I didn't necessarily feel right. Like, today I'm not on any medication or anything like that. I just eat and live life. What I really struggled with was opening up to people and being vulnerable. I didn't think I was understood, or people really saw me for who I was, or people understood what I felt, and what I went through. I remember the first group therapy session I had whenever I came here with Ben Harrison, and he just picked me apart and kind of like he shined the mirror on me, and I just remember breaking down, crying, and hugging him. And I haven't seen Ben in a while. He's one of the people that I haven't seen in a while. But man, and then of course I still wanted to BS my way through. I thought I could live a double life and not, I could sit on the fence between sobriety and addiction, but I can't do that. I'm either in it or I'm out of it. But all my life I'd tried to cut corners and try to find an other solution. But, I'm faced with the dilemma here. I'm either going to accept spiritual help or drink and drug my way to death, blotting out my existence to the best of my ability. Those are my two options. And I really struggled with I could identify with other people, but I always think they were lying. I didn't think they were addicts or or alcoholics. I didn't think they understood what I was going through until I started opening up, and these other people had the similar experiences like I did. I was like, wow.
Let me touch on this real quick. Something jumped out to me. Like from a clinical intervention perspective, you brought up Ben Harrison.
Yeah.
One of the things that we see all the time in treatment is, I'll throw this out there. Josh has always been super respectful. I would say when he was here, quiet, kind of kept to yourself. If you were called on, for lack of a better way to put it, I think you were very compliant. Like if somebody asked you a question in group, you would answer. You didn't avoid that, but you had to be, prodded a little bit. And the thing that I like about Ben Harrison's style, for instance, like anything in life, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's really easy to challenge the people that are like obnoxious billboards, right? In the group room or in the treatment setting. But when you got guys like Josh that are just quiet, polite, respectful, a guy like Ben Harrison will challenge you and poke you until you spill over, basically, and come out of that polite, quiet, respectful character. Not that you were ever disrespectful, but because it's the people that sit quietly, that's their defense mechanism in life, basically. How do I just stay out of the limelight? I'm doing my meth, and it takes sometimes ruffling feathers, for lack of a better way to put it, to really get to somebody, get that message to them that they need to hear. We see that all the time. It's like being the chameleon, so to speak. He would be like a chameleon, and you got to take that chameleon, just skewer it, right? And we like it when that happens. Like the individuals tend to get frustrated, upset, but at the end of the day, that has to happen in this process. And Ben Harrison's one of those guys. He don't care about your feelings. Nope. If he sees that something's off, because it's the guys like Josh that, the loud ones, they're suffering because they don't shut up about it. But guys like Josh sit there quietly and they're just in the crock pot, right? Like depressed, falling apart inside. Nobody understands me. You got to get them to like come out and become that billboard. Like, here's what's going on. Because a lot of times, too, I think that introverted people have a hard time expressing what they're feeling, too, at the same time. Like, you're feeling so much stuff when you first get sober, you don't even know how to say how you're feeling. And it takes somebody like Ben to, like, give you that guidance, like, and direction to help you kind of explain it and process it.
Yeah, Ben Harrison's great. He's actually coming back on the podcast in a couple weeks.
Is he?
Yeah.
We were talking about him yesterday, a group of how he does not hide his facial expressions at all. No. Like, dude, it's so funny. Like, and the clients love it. At first, they're like, "Oh, I got to go to Ben's group." And I joke about it with him. I'm like, "Who's your victim today, Ben?" But that's what it takes, man. We'd rather step on your toes than step on your grave. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
So you said you had 2 years yesterday.
Right.
And it's July 12th. You entered into detox in April?
Yeah.
Did you have a slip up?
I did. I was huffing air duster here at Rock.
I remember this too. I thought so. I was going to fact check myself and ask about this.
Yeah.
This goes back to the willingness. Doing air duster, there is no drug test for that. Nobody would have known. Josh came out and told on himself, right? You didn't get caught at all.
Nope.
No.
Not at all.
I didn't remember any of this. But it's coming back to me.
And I want to point this out, like, people relapse in this process. The difference is Josh is someone that's honest. You can help people that are honest. And I'll tell our clients this. I'll tell people that I'm trying to help, like, hey, man, we make mistakes. You got that mental obsession, that physical allergy. If you go get drunk or high, just be straight up, because we can help people that are being honest if you really want it.
Right.
Yeah.
He told on himself when...
It took a while because it was killing me.
Yeah.
It felt awful, showing up to group and, kind of putting on this facade that everything's okay. I'm being compliant, and I'm going along to get along. But, inside I'm still dying. I'm thinking I'm a part, but I'm not necessarily in it. I'm around it, but I'm not in it. And that was killing me, thinking, because then again, these people don't know what I'm going through. I'm not opening myself up to that. So that secret was just festering in me. And eventually I couldn't take it anymore because I didn't want to put a drink or a hard drug into my body. So I thought that, air duster doesn't show up on drug tests. It's like a quick high. And like, if I take a hit, I'll have that relief, because that's what I sought for. I was trying to get outside of myself, but man, eventually that secret was just killing me. So I told on myself.
Let's get into psychology behind that too. It's like being a fraud, right? And there's a saying in the rooms of, they say AA will ruin your drinking, but basically it's the worst case scenario is having a head full of AA and a belly full of booze. If you look at this situation where it's like eating him up alive from a psychological perspective, he is huffing duster, yet then having to come to group and pretend to be Captain Recovery and talk about recovery principles.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of recovery, is identifying that we have who our stage character is. We're presenting to the world constantly in active addiction who we want everybody to think we are. You know, I'm doing meth, shooting dope, still trying to show up to work so nobody knows. We get tired of that on the streets in an active addiction, and that a lot of times that's what brings us into treatment. But then if we're continuing to do it here in treatment, like at some point it comes to a head because you no longer have the ease and comfort of the drugs and alcohol, and you're being forced to talk about recovery. On the streets, you're like, you ain't talking about recovery, you're just getting high.
Yeah.
But like to come and sit in a group and like feel like a fraud, so to speak. That's why my take on it, every time I relapse in a treatment center, I just left. I'm like, bro, I ain't going to sit here smoking crack and try and pretend like I'm care about talking about sobriety right now. Like, I wanted everything out of my way.
So I want to transition now to two in particular things. The first one being the sober living. So Ben, before we started recording, I asked Josh, I said, where are you living now? What are you doing? Go ahead and share on that.
So I've been living at Choice of Sober Living for almost the past 2 years. You know, Ben actually suggested it to me because I was going to be leaving Rock and discharged. Because after everybody, I told everybody that I was huffing Duster. You know, people were thankful that I was honest, but at the same time, it's like, all right, you're going to need to find another place to live because your time is coming up. And I remember getting to sober living and telling my sponsors like, I don't like this room. It's too small. I don't have enough space to put my stuff. She lied about there being a pool there. You know, I have these resentments and I'm already judging the fact that, you know, it's like, I don't think it's for me. And, you know, my sponsor just said, just make a 6-month commitment. And I've been there ever since.
I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Not much. 2 years in sober living is a long time.
Yeah.
What have been the main takeaways over the last 2 years being in a sober living environment and why you feel it's so important?
So, you know, for me, surrounding myself with people who are going through it like I am, I see people coming in all the time. You know, they don't necessarily, they've never done life before. I've never done life before. I didn't ever do my dishes. I never cooked for myself. Making my bed every day. You know, all I knew was to go to work and pay my bills. Even then, I didn't have rent to pay. You know, so coming into sober living, I had rent to pay. I was still paying my truck. You know, I had chores. I had to make my bed in the morning. I had to keep things clean. I had to learn how to cook for myself. And not only that, I was surrounded by people who were going through the same experience that I had. You know, if they were an addict or an alcoholic, they knew how I was feeling and what I was going through, regardless of the sober time, you know. And that house had just opened up whenever I got there. It had been open for, I think, less than a month. And I'm still one of the original people there. You know, some people have left and, you know, the original house manager died like months ago, earlier this year. Yeah.
From an overdose?
Yeah, from alcohol poisoning, I believe. He just died. And I was like, wow. You know, it's like, I love this guy. He got through all his steps, but he still ended up going out and drinking. And, you know, it's like, I tell these people, you know, it's like, you can appear well. It's like what Ben was talking about. You can appear well and you can cooperate and you can really just like, it looks great on the outside, but, you know, until you're vulnerable and tell other people what you're going through and how you're feeling. Like there's an H&I commitment that comes in every Wednesday. And usually because if I don't share in group, you know, I just kind of let out whatever I'm going through in there. At the same time, you know, I'm grateful and I shine a light on what recovery has given me, you know, because I'm not just going to go to a meeting and say, all right, I'm going to dump all this crap on you and then here, do with it what you want. But, you know, I try to bring whatever recovery I have on that aspect because I know this too shall pass. You know, maybe this isn't like it sucks right now, but maybe this is a blessing for further down the road, you know, because I don't know what I'm going through, you know, but overall, sober living has given me so many tools to go out there in the real world eventually. and, become a productive member of society. Being able to cook for myself, that's important. Being able to take care of myself, being able to have a clean space, and having the accountability, whether somebody is watching or whether somebody isn't, having to go to 5 meetings every week. I go to a meeting every day now. I'm active in service, and I used to not care about those things. I was very bitter and very angry inside about people who could share love and talk and hug and, just have a good time. I remember coming into AA, I was like, I hate these people because I didn't think they understood how unhappy I was, because I couldn't stand the thought of anybody else being happy if I wasn't happy. And now I'm one of those people that can laugh and hug and talk to other people and give other people hugs. And I can be vulnerable with other people. And I never saw that coming. I couldn't plan it. I had no idea that I was going to, like if 2 years ago I would have known that I'd have 2 years in a day today, I would say you're crazy, because I had no plans of ever stopping drinking and drugging. I thought I was going to become a statistic, and I was okay with that. But today,
yeah,
it's amazing.
Ben and I just did a episode, and it'll be out before this one. And we answered an email question. This lady, she's a mom, and she was asking us some questions and our opinions on her son and stuff like that. And her son completed 30 days and moved back into her house. And what was that? What's your initial thoughts on that?
Man, in my experience, whenever I moved, after I got kicked out of sober living and lived at my parents' house, it's like the same. I fell really quickly into the same behaviors. And it wasn't old behavior because I was still doing it. I hadn't been taught anything different. Sure, I got out of treatment. I've been told, like, this is what I should do, reading 86 through 88. But I just went to treatment because I thought that treatment was going to get me sober. I thought I just needed to be separated, and then I was going to be okay. And then throw me back into that environment that I've been using in my entire life. My experience is that it didn't take long for me to drink and use again. Even though I remember telling my mom, yeah, I've got this. I think everything's going to be good. I went to treatment. I think I thought I had an understanding of the steps. I was like, I'm rattling off, I'm powerless over alcohol and that my life is unmanageable in my head, and and then looking for a higher power to restore me to sanity. I was like, yeah, I believe in this thing, but I still had no experience with it. I mean, I had plenty of experience that I was powerless, but.
And a lot of that experience came from being in sober living.
Yeah.
And just being around those people. So, Mom, I mean, just hope that you hear this and, reconsider your current situation that you're in.
Well, it's all the life skill stuff. And this is why, too, I don't want to go too far off on a rabbit trail here, but when picking a treatment center, why you ask about clinical competency, frontline staff, housing, what clients are actually responsible for in daily life there versus like, hey, I'm going to go to the place where they have a 5-star chef that cooks every meal for me. Like you just heard Josh, like, yeah, while you're in detox, dude, if someone's cooking for you, fine. Like, bro, yeah. I couldn't get out of bed. You know what I'm saying? But after detox, when you're medically better, like, dude, you got to be learning how to do this stuff on your own. As drug addicts, we don't. Go back to gas station food, dude. I was living off gas station food, right? In my active addiction, I'd go in and get a roll of Ritz crackers, single stack.
Oh,
50
really?
cents. Bro, yeah, because the Quickie Marts I was going to, dude, they didn't sell the whole box. They, like, opened it up and sold it one. Like cigarette singles.
Oh,
do they even still do that?
I don't know.
Get a cigarette for 25 cents.
Well, that's probably what they cost now anyway.
Yeah.
25 cents. How many cigarettes are in a pack?
20.
20? What's the math on that? $6?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't do too well in school.
Go ahead.
we were saying earlier too, because I want to touch on this where, Josh is talking about going to meetings every day, and obviously he's had a lifestyle change as well. I said earlier, there's half of Josh. One thing that one of my sponsees that's been sober for many years at this point brings this up all the time. It drives him crazy. How you see people, I think you've said this too, Tom, maybe, how you see people that like go to a meeting every day, talk AA nonstop, recovery nonstop, but on the back end, dude, they're eating McDonald's all day, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Just they look like they're about to keel over. Maybe not an overdose right now, but you're certainly going to have a heart attack or brain aneurysm or something just because you've totally let your health go. Like,
yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to transition to, because when I saw Josh in the hallway, the reason I didn't recognize Josh is because you've lost how much weight?
55 pounds.
55 pounds. And I'll tell you.
Without meth.
Yeah, without meth.
That's without meth. Yeah. I kind of like did a double take, like, holy shit, And yes, we have brought this up on the podcast many a times that sobriety does offer you a life beyond your wildest imagination. But with that comes responsibility. And part of that responsibility is taking care of our bodies. We only have one of them. And it's unfortunate to see. And listen, I'm not the pinnacle of health. I mean, I've been very open on the podcast. I struggle with food. Yes, I use nicotine. Yes, I probably drink more caffeine than I need to. But, I work out, I exercise. I'm mindful of what I'm eating, mindful of how much nicotine or caffeine I'm taking in, stuff like that. And I take the precautionary measures. I just went through all these cardiology appointments because Ben and Tambini really were pushing me to do it. And I went and I did it. And proud to say my calcium score was a 0, Ben. Did I tell you that?
No.
0. Perfect. And my echocardiogram came back perfect. So what I do? I went out that night and got a cheeseburger and French fries.
Reward yourself.
I just got a year sober. Let me go smoke some crack.
Yeah. No, but it's pretty remarkable, the physical transformation that you've had. I want to spend some time on this because I think it's very, very important. And, what made you start that?
So what helped me is I had a goal. In September, one of my childhood friends is getting married. And I got the invitation because, having sobriety is a blessing, but being able to participate in life with people that I grew up with, that's also another blessing, especially whenever their life continued and mine kind of went downhill. And, being able to show up for them, and especially I wanted it to be a gift for myself, as well as, it's like, I wanted to look good. And, being 270, sometimes pushing 275, I have a huge gut. I was having trouble getting down and working because I'm an electrician. Sometimes I have to get on my knee and work on an outlet or anything like that, or dig. And, I was huffing and puffing, getting up. And I always just was so tired. Like I could eat a whole calzone and then go up in the ladder and work. But like now it's just so much different. I have more energy to work. I have more energy to go out and do the things that I love. And not only that, but I'm more confident. It took me only 3 months to lose 55 pounds, but I needed structure because whenever I tried to do this on my own, whenever I tried to eat healthy on my own, I didn't know what that really was. I mean, sure, I could have a salad, but, all my life I heard lettuce has like no nutritional value. It's all water. And, it's like, I was like, I have plenty of water throughout my day, so I'm not even going to bother eating that. But, having a good serving of vegetables, like 3 servings of vegetables and like a lean protein, and like, eating these snacks throughout the day that are macroed like to be low carbs, low sugar, and low fat, and like high in protein. I got into this ketosis. I was burning my fat, And it was like that fat was an energy source. So like I was running on like high octane fuel, even like this like past month, I've been quote unquote cheating a little bit, having some donuts, having cake, and whenever I got to this weight, and, it's like you said, you had a good score, like 0 calcium, and, go reward yourself with like a burger. Sometimes I would reward myself with like a couple of donuts from Dunkin' Donuts or like some cake or anything like that. Just because I got to this weight, I start to think, you know what, maybe I can have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I've shed the pounds and I feel good, but little did I know it's those tiny decisions that kind of get me back there. I have no problem putting on weight. It was just keeping it off. And for the past month, I've been able to maintain around like anywhere from 210 to 215.
Man, I weigh more than that. I weigh 225, 227.
There's a big correlation there. Kind of like there's a saying, it's easy to get sober, it's hard to stay sober. You said basically you could lose the weight, it was keeping it off. That's why like we push lifestyle change, whether you're talking about sobriety or losing weight or getting fit or whatever the case is. It's lifestyle change. And I love that you brought up, you said it before we started recording, you were like, I've done this without any pharmaceuticals or drugs or supplements. I'm just getting these healthy meals and I'm weighing out my food.
Yeah.
And now it's routine. Is it that safe to say?
It's routine. And, like I used to like think that I couldn't go out to eat or I couldn't eat this or eat that. But, I was so sick and tired of being overweight and looking at myself in the mirror and even hating myself in the sobriety and how I looked. I could show up to meetings and have this life in AA, but at the same time in my personal life, I'm not doing anything for myself, and that was killing me. If I really love myself, I'm going to do these things for myself to better myself, not just spiritually, but physically. If I don't continue to grow, whatever that looks like for me, I just didn't want to be overweight, going to the doctor. I didn't want to be diabetic. I didn't want to have to suffer those consequences, and enough was enough. And, having that goal to go to that wedding over in September, that was a big force and driving me there. That and, that low self-esteem, that was killing me. Absolutely killing me.
I like the fact too that there's goals.
Yeah.
Like the qualifying event, if you will, is the wedding.
Yeah.
For instance, for me with competing in the bodybuilding stuff, I feel like if that wasn't there, like that's when I go off the deep end. It's knowing that there's like some date that I have to have something accomplished by, and then resetting it. Like after the wedding, what are you going to do?
Right.
Are you going to have a new build on that goal? Right now it's about the wedding. What's it going to be about later? Maybe you say to yourself, I'd like to run my first triathlon 6 months after that or something. I don't know. But just constantly upping your goal or setting a milestone out in the future that you have to hit that's going to help keep you on track.
Right.
Have you incorporated exercise or no? Just really diet?
I mean, I usually get a lot of my exercise through my job.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm pretty lazy. I like to be chilling at home and just vegging out most of the time, because whenever I get home, I'm usually very tired, or I'm just out of that work headspace, and I kind of just want to be able to come home and relax and do whatever I usually do.
Yeah.
Have a couple hours of downtime and then hit a meeting, something like that. So going to work and then going and stressing the gym, it's like for me, I'm just not in that headspace right now.
And I think that's totally fine. And, given the level of work that you do, I mean, an electrician in South Florida has got to be rather taxing.
Yeah, it's hot. And, I try not to beat myself up about it. But, it's something that will come in time. And I know it will come in time. It's just whenever, if I'm the kind of person, I'm very stubborn, until I've had enough pain, that's whenever I'm ready to change. Whenever I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, whenever I feel like this is not doing anything for me, I'll kind of just squeeze that until all that juice is gone. And whenever all that juice is gone, something's going to propel me to launch into something else, you know. That's kind of how it was in my addiction, you know.
Yeah.
I think too, they're building blocks though too. Like you started off with getting sober. Then you implemented all the life skill stuff that you were talking about. Then you've implemented the nutrition part. But every time that but look at it like this. In the beginning, I'm sure you were putting a ton of effort into staying sober, right?
Yeah.
It's way easier today, isn't it?
It is.
Then you actually have to put effort into making your bed. I bet it's second nature making your bed now.
It is.
Like what used to feel like an inconvenience or work, when it becomes routine, you can like build on the next thing after that. And I like the way you explain that, because like you're like, when I get to that point, that's what. But everything that you had to work for before becomes a norm at some point, and then once that's a norm, then you can add something else, so to speak. People don't see the progression like that. They want to just, I want all this right here, right now. You know, I want to be sober. I want to have my own place and the perfect job and be in shape, and like make one a norm at a time. You can work on them all simultaneously, but
it's what you you reference a lot, that Maslow hierarchy of needs.
yes,
You know?
I love the pyramid.
Yeah. Last thing. You're about to board a flight
Yeah.
to go to Virginia.
Right.
This is pretty cool. And I think this is just, and I only want to bring this up. We'll only spend 30 seconds on it or whatever. It's really one of the gifts of sobriety, being able to do what you're about to do. Share on that.
Right. So, you know, it's like, I like to play video games. Whatever, you know, for me, it's funny. Come home from work to just go ahead and work on something else. Sometimes I spend a little bit too much time on it. But, you know, I've been playing with these guys for over the past year. And one of the guys just bought a house. And, you know, it's like a group of like 8 to 10 guys. And 8 guys, including myself, are flying to Virginia to have this housewarming party and being able to like go out and experience life together, you know, except instead of being behind a screen, you know, I actually get to meet these people. I've never met these people in my life. I talk to them almost every day, and just BS with them. But it's, you know, it's funny because, you know, get to go to like this little, what is it? Like a little game center, but it's like a whole, it's got like walls of board games and everything.
Like a GameStop type thing?
Yeah, something like that, or like a game cafe, and it's like got food and games and everything.
Oh, okay.
And you know, and then we're gonna be able to go to Drive Shack for like 2 hours and just whack some balls with the guys for like 2 hours, and then have like $200 worth of food credits. And you know, just what gets me is the fellowship. You know, these people aren't addicts and alcoholics, and I can actually show up in life and be a part of that. Like I don't have to always be around alcoholics and drug addicts all the time. I love it though, because these people understand. But like, even though these people don't understand, you know, they still have their own struggles, whether it's like depression or anything else. They don't have to be a drug addict or an alcoholic for me to be friends and relate with them at a human level. And it's just such a blessing to be able to do this stuff sober, because I never saw it coming. I thought I was going to just be locked in my room shooting dope. And at the time, I thought I was okay. Now I have this incredible life. You know, I can't even count on both of my hands how many blessings I have.
I want to ask a question that's like way off, different topic than this, that I can't help myself.
Okay, then we're going to wrap it up.
All right. You said something way earlier, and let me preface this. I am not a doctor. Dr. T is not here. But I like hearing people's experiences. I am not anti-medication by any means. People need meds, etc. But I like hearing people's experiences. You made a comment way earlier in the podcast about you were on antidepressants, but you weren't feeling good, and now you're on nothing.
Right.
What was your experience with that like? Did you feel like you needed them? Did you not feel like you needed them? Did someone put you on them when you didn't need them?
So whenever I got into detox, you know, obviously I was given medication. I didn't know I was withdrawing off of crystal and other substances. So of course, you know, I was given something to kind of like combat that. But it didn't necessarily, I was always seeking something to make me feel better. I didn't know that to feel better, in my experience, that, I just had to suffer with whatever I was feeling. I was on some antidepressants and like sleep meds. Like now I fall asleep within 5 minutes. I don't take any medication at all. I remember going to work one day and I was just like, I feel so sluggish. I don't want to get up on this ladder and hook up these lights or do any of that stuff. And it's like, I didn't even really want to participate in life. I didn't really want to come to group or anything like that. And then eventually, whenever I moved to sober living, I did this without doctor's orders, which is, I do not recommend that, because some people do need medication. Some people really do have underlying issues. And for me, I just stopped taking my medication, and that is completely advised against. Like, I don't recommend that.
Yeah, neither do we.
Neither do we. Correct.
But in my case, for me, whenever I got off the medication, I felt like I was more motivated to be at work and kind of show up in life. I felt more energy for some reason. But, it's like, I don't recommend that at all. I recommend people stick with a doctor and get on, like, just try not to
consult a doctor.
Just don't do this yourself, because I was so used to doing things myself, and usually it got me into a bad experience, and thankfully, I was surrounded with people in AA, and I started working a program, and eventually it kind of just balanced out. That's just my experience. And if anybody else has experienced that, great. But most of the time, some people need medication. Yeah. I thought I was a schizophrenic whenever I came in here. It turns out it was just meth psychosis.
Well, yeah, that's normally the case. Yeah.
I wanted to ask that because I like getting people's take. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I've been working in the field for over a decade now and got to watch a lot of cases. I'll just call it what it is. I've seen a lot. Right. And seeing that, just because I don't have letters behind my name doesn't mean that I haven't come up with some theories of my own where, like, yes, at the detox level of care, medications are necessary. Let's call it what it is. Even I'll use your specific case. You came in, meth completely deteriorates your dopamine, your serotonin levels, all the above. Right. Using a medication to kickstart that, to get somebody through early recovery, 100%. I'm on board with that. But at some point, one of the things that I hate is that most doctors, from what I've seen, I'm sure there's some out there maybe, are just so, well, you're on this medication, it's not working, let's get you on another one, get you on another one, get you on another one. Rather than, okay, detox is over, you're off the drugs, the post-acute withdrawal is done, let's find out what your actual zero baseline is. And I feel like so oftentimes a reevaluation of somebody's mental health is not done. They just assume that, like, because they went into detox that way, that's a... How many people come out of detox with the bipolar diagnosis? Like, every single one. And then by the time they're, like, 6 months sober, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not really bipolar. Like, all the time. You can't... And we've talked about this with Dr. T, so I'll use what she says as the doctor. Like, you can't diagnose somebody unless you've been working with them for at least 6 months. Longer. Did she say 6 months or longer?
I can't remember.
But yeah, it was
a while.
A significant amount of time. You can't just diagnose somebody like in detox. And that's what happens. That way insurance gets paid. Like, oh, if we put this diagnosis, then the insurance will pay for it. That's it's is what it is. Call it that. But reevaluating the situation, like, dude, here you are on no medications.
Thriving,
yeah. And yeah, man, please stop and reevaluate once you got some sober time. And maybe you do need those meds. I'm not saying get off of them. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but be sure to reevaluate your situation.
Well, Josh, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for doing this. I think that, you're obviously doing great. So glad you showed up here today. And yeah, man, just keep doing what you're doing. Ben, any final thoughts?
No, dude, you honestly did make my day coming in here. I almost cried for a second.
Oh,
Did
you did?
catch that? Yeah, dude. My
get you
eyes
off
started
camera.
watering.
Oh, wow. That's
When you brought up the whole thing where I said, "Oh, can't I just start a day without like some negative circumstance going on?"
yeah. I
And
thought
then-
it was
but-
when he
but-
started rehearsing the big book.
Oh, that too. That's where it started.
Big book Ben over here.
But dude, you honestly like seeing you here today. Really, this is
needed it.
this is why we do this, man.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.